Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Matthew Merrett. Matt, how are you doing today?
Not bad. Just along for the ride with our 2021 New York Jets, aren't we? They are struggling to kind of get over the line and find that third win.
Yeah, it's a struggle, and it is, it's that time where we do look ahead to the next season and see how we can fix today's problems. But I think there was still a lot to take out of it. We're coming off this 24-17 loss to the Dolphins, where I think it was a more respectable loss, more of the losses that I think are expected this season in terms of we're going to lose games this way, and hopefully, these big blowout losses have not been nice. So at least we were in a game. We had something to cheer about for the majority of the game. So yeah, some of the young players showed out, particularly one young player showed out, which was a lot of fun. And obviously now we look forward to maybe Zach coming back as we head towards Houston next week. So I mean, looking back at this game, I think it was a pretty even game going into as we entered halfway through the second half, and then it kind of just got out of they got that position and we just weren't able to generate enough with Joe Flacco at QB. What was your thoughts of the Jets offense? Your overall thoughts of the Jets offense yesterday?
So I think holistically the decision to start Joe Flacco was kind of vindicated. I think that Dolphins defense showed up exactly how we thought they would. I mean, Xavier Howard is so good in man coverage, isn't he? That it just allows the Dolphins to send those extra people after the quarterback, and having Joe Flacco to make those quick reads, I think was the right move. I think also Mike LaFleur has kind of continued this positive trend that we've seen on him since he's been up in the booth. The personnel usage has been better. We're not seeing these two tight end sets. We're not seeing these fullback sets. We're seeing the Jets kind of plan ahead and do a couple of thinking ahead. The play calling feels a bit snappier, a bit more situationally aware. Some of the play calls were really nice. I think just being able to send someone like Elijah. There was a play in the first half where he kind of ran all the way underneath the behind the offensive line, caught the ball in the flat and was able to turn upfield for about 10 to 12 yards. And they're just starting to work out how they want to use him.
Mm-hmm.
They're still lacking explosiveness. And it's kind of across the board. It kind of starts at the quarterback position. Joe Flacco kind of dinked and dunked and took his chances where he had them. There wasn't as much down the field throwing as we were looking for. At wide receiver, I still feel like they're missing a bit of oomph, a bit of impetus. And I think that position is quickly rising up the needs in terms of what needs to be addressed in the off-season, which could be good when you look at how well the Ohio State wide receivers played this weekend. Tight end, there was one catch and run from Griffin, but apart from that, I didn't really see anything from them. The bright spot, and I know Elijah Moore is going to take a lot of the credit, but for me, Michael Carter was excellent. And when he went off injured, the whole offense ground to a halt. And what he's able to do is just keep this offense on time, on momentum, and keep turning 1-2 yard runs into 4, 5, 6 yard gainers. He is so nifty behind the line of scrimmage and meeting that first man. It's like a completely different player to what we've had in the backfield over the last decade or so. I came away more and more impressed with him, and I think it's a real shame that it doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the Houston game, because that would have been an ideal weapon for Zach to have. So it's a shame once he went off, it kind of all slowed down and ground to a halt, and in those crucial third, fourth quarter drives, we weren't quite able to find anything. I'll squeeze one last bit in, and this is tied to the offense, just in terms of finishing drives, but Matt Amendola being terrible is a huge indictment on Joe Douglas, because we could all see this was going to, well, not all see, but it's not a hard prediction to make that someone who had struggled with his kicks in college, hadn't been picked up by a team, bounced around the league and didn't look overly phenomenal in training camp and pre-season. He's costing the team points. I think it was 6 points he missed yesterday. Mm-hmm. One of them was a long kick, but one of them's easily make one. Kind of, you've got to be hitting that kick. 6 points is a lot of points in those games, and the Jets are shooting themselves in the foot, and we'll come on to how they shot themselves in the foot on defense, because that was awful. But there's just, these mistakes are the things which we need ironed out, and hopefully and we're all optimistic that Salah's first year iron out these mistakes and it can be building blocks for the future, because the players and the fundamental pieces that they have on offense, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, Elijah Vera-Tucker, we hope Zach Wilson, there is stuff to be excited about for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think David would debate your take on the wide receiver thing. You know, he's obviously thinking that we have to go elsewhere with the way it's working out, with maybe Elijah taking that wide receiver 1 role, and Corey slotting into his natural number 2. You know, you could say you bring in one of those Ohio State guys, and then that's just an incredible 1-2 punch as well. So it's that debate is there, but we've got so many holes. Then that's a debate down for the off season. But yeah, I think the off season, the offense definitely lacked that punch. I think it was the right call for Flacco to come in. I think he was able to diagnose the blitz, knew where his hot reads were, knew where he had to get the ball out quickly and when to get it and where the blitzes were coming from. I think he was able to diagnose that really well, and overall, so I think the offense did well because of that. I think Elijah's big day was in part due to him managing that situation well, but I feel that we just were limited. Like that lack of explosion, that lack of ability to make that play when it's not there. Like it just wasn't. That's what Zach can do, and that's what obviously, hopefully, going forward, if you can implement what good the quarterbacks that we've seen, that have stepped in for him have done, and then you apply some of his explosiveness. That's hopefully where you can say, yeah, you can run the game, and then when it goes a bit crazy, we need you get you out on the move. Maybe he can run for a first down, which just Joe Flacco wasn't able to do. There's a few times where he broke free, and you're just like, where are you going, dude? Like they're going to catch you, and predictably they did at the line of scrimmage. So hopefully those things that Zach can bring from a physical standpoint will help elevate the offense to a new level, which is be great because they've already been pretty good, as you said. They've been doing really well. Mike LaFleur's been really, really good the last 3 or 4 weeks without Zach. So hopefully that does continue. I think, Michael Carter, a great performance before he went out. And
how did he fall to the 4th round? It's quickly becoming the steal of the draft.
It's unbelievable. I mean, some of those runs. I mean, I think it was 68 yards he got, if I'm not mistaken. Some of those were
100 if he'd stayed on for the full game.
That would
have been his first 100-yard rushing game.
But I feel like some of the yardage there was just he was getting 5 or 6 yards on a play that should have been -2 on some plays. There was a couple where there was one where he cut back and then changed direction completely, and then ended up driving forward for 5 or 6 yards. And you're like, that was a lost play, and you've just made it an absolute bonus. Like the guy's just a really, really special talent. I think, in terms of, I think him and Moore is very exciting to see that day. And that's why I think coming off this loss, I'm not too disheartened, because I think the whole point of this overall, the defense is decimated, and we'll get to that in a second, right? There's low investment in some positions and decimation from injury in others, and I just feel that's what's going to be. But remember that they really put a lot of the when you think of the 2 free agent tickets, one was defense, one was offense. So that's 2 big on either side, and so that's big investment with Corey Davis on that side, and obviously Keelan Cole. But in the draft, they went really heavy on the offensive side with the first 4 picks being the premium picks. I think that's why I think that was always the right call. We knew that was the right call. We said that was the right call to support Zach and get have that ability, that amount of talent around him to try and give him the most successful first year. And we all said, okay, and if that means the defense is going to take a step back in the first year, that's the way we want it. So that's where we are, right? So I'm not too disheartened overall by the situation, even though 2-8 doesn't look great. It does look, it's exciting to see that we're again in the top, the top 2 picks of the draft. Yet again, we're at the top, but you see there's a process here, and if you can pair, if you can put that quality into that defense, and then you pair it with this offense that's playing quite well, you see there's a blueprint for success. So
yeah, and this is the thing at the moment. Salah, for all the critics he's getting, for all the criticism, and a lot of it is justified, and he's taking his shots in the media and on the sideline, and some of it's fair, but he is coaching a very bare squad on both sides of the ball. This offense and defense are are light on numbers. I know the offense is starting to get back there, but losing Michael Carter, not having your starting quarterback, your wide receiver room has kind of been in rotation all year. Your tight ends have been destroyed. You're starting with McGovern and Greg Van Roten for a certain point, and LDT stepped in and looked a lot better. Yesterday, Moses went off injured yesterday. On defense, I mean, the list is endless on defense, and you're kind of in a position where next season you're probably looking at 6 or 7 new starters on the defense and 4 or 5 new starters on the offense. It is a big ask for Salah at the moment. He's kind of coaching with one hand behind his back and trying to do a lot with a little. So the process is what's important, and I think it's kind of come up a couple of times in terms of, I've seen the Beat mention it and how it's been spoken about in the media. And what they're trying to avoid is kind of, when we look back to Todd Bowles, Mike McCagnon, Fitzpatrick's first year, where it was big spending, bringing people like Brandon Marshall, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Darrell Revis, Antonio Cromartie, players who are expensive but past their prime. And the Jets are trying to avoid that, to open up a pretty clear window. And I think Rich Samini had a discussion in his Saturday morning article with Salah, and they're really targeting 2023 to 2028 as like this team's prime window based on how they're building it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to pan out or not. No, none of us do. But I think it's a bit of short-term pain for what we hope is long-term gain. And whether that comes true or not, a lot of that is going to kind of sink or swim based off of Zach and how he performs, and if he can kind of become that top-tier quarterback that we hope he can be. But I guess there is a process there, and we should... it's up to each fan how much faith you want to put in that process, how much trust you want to do it. I understand at this point in supporting the Jets over the last decade, it is very easy for that faith to be thin, that patience to be thin. You just want to be able to turn up on a Sunday and watch a decent product, because yesterday's game was pretty boring. I know the Jets were kind of close and touch and go right up until the end, like the third quarter, and then Miami were able to put together that kind of long drive. But you just want a bit of excitement, a bit of favor, and that's kind of starting to come with this rookie class. But we'd like to see it kind of translated into the win column.
I think the boringness was always going to be inherent with Joe Flacco playing. He was always going to be a boring play. It was always the less exciting option, but I think it was it's always going to be that when you compare it to what someone like Zach can do, where Flacco is now in his career. So I think that's naturally inherent. There was going to be a bit more, there was going to be less explosion, and hopefully, well, we did see some because of the ball getting into the playmakers' hands. And I think if Michael Carter stays in that game, I think it might be a different game. I think the other thing was the officiating was atrocious on both sides. I mean, we harp on some of the decisions, the Elijah Moore non-call when the jersey grab, the decision where Durham Smythe throws himself at Jason Pinnock's, at his feet, and they call a kind of holding call or whatever it was. And I mean, it was bad, but I think even on Miami's side there was a few bad calls as well that went in our favor. So overall, it was just kind of another thing that was kind of making the game worse than it should have been, and kind of ruining the overall product. But I think, I think you're right in terms of like people not wanting to wait for this time, but I think we have to just go back to, we've got to think about where are we now in terms of the process of, like, if this is really year one and you really think about it, like, okay, if that's the case, well, what should we be seeing in year one from this plan? Like, I go back to what the plan was in year one, was to focus on the offense mostly. Obviously, Carl Lawson and some of the guys at the back end of the draft were brought in as kind of punts, and some of them have worked out quite well. But overall, the thought was, let's go offensive strong in the first year, and it's bearing out that way. And then you obviously take away, I mean, it's basically like 6 starters from the defense who are out. If you think of like 6 good players who would be rotating, either starting or making a lot of reps, you think of Lawson and Huff, you think of the 2, Sherwood and Nasruddin, you think of May and Joyner. That's right up the middle. Now you've got Eccles out as well. That's 7. It's like there's significant injuries in this defense. Never mind that there wasn't that much investment in it in the first place, other than Carl Lawson. So I think if you just understand that, you say, well, what is the process all right? Yeah, because if you think of what was happening the last couple of years, we were having, uh, the Frank Gore running up the middle constantly on second and long. Just put that
Mm.
in your brain. Every time you get frustrated with this year's Jets, just put that mindset of like watching last few years Jets where Frank Gore was taking the ball at second and long and running it for 1 yard, and then putting a 3rd and 9 for that Sam, and then him being hurried out and throwing out of bounds or an interception. We saw that process was not going anywhere, and like we are not in that situation now. You see the young players are progressing in a way that you'd want to see them, the ones that are high draft quality, and obviously Zach's the biggest one, and we have to see that, but the other three guys who are taking in those premium positions are really looking like they are worth and good value for what we got in the draft, and that's really exciting. So I can't buy this negativity, because I've seen too much of that's been worse. Like I've seen worse. Like, this is nothing. This is nothing from what we've seen before in terms of some of the really bad years, especially the last couple. So I think, yeah, patience is needed, but I completely understand frustration on the day. Yeah, I don't want to see this. I want to see us trying to win and beat up on. It's been 10 games against AFC East opponents that we haven't beaten them. Come on, let's get a win. But it's gonna come. It's gonna come. I can see the process is working. It's just gonna be a multi-year process, unfortunately. But I see it differently to other years. It's not just like a bit of a mess. I really feel that people that are there are the right people, and I think we've said that all along, and I think that's still in case. And funny, you talk about Salah this week, and obviously the whole Rex Ryan situation. Did you see Rex Ryan kind of follow up on his comments from last week? When this week, did you see his video about he
Yeah,
had
that was a nice bit of Jets PR in there, wasn't it, from Rex?
yeah
To be fair to him,
yeah
it is kind of classic Rex making him about himself, and I
of
think
course. It
I
was,
think it's a
it
bit
was
of
very much about
entertainment.
himself. It was like, well, I take what I take of him, and then because my point is the most important opinion is that I think he's a good guy. It's like, yeah, never mind like every other opinion of anybody who's ever kind of worked with Salah gives him like glowing reports, but he's got the Rex seal of approval now, so it's like it's all good now. But yeah, I said it's just a process, but yeah, the defense as we talked about. It's kind of, and we talked about the injuries and the amount of shirts. I mean, I'm having to look at, I'm having to see who's this player, who's this number. Like, it's just loads of different numbers. I mean, we got this guy Elijah Riley's coming off the street, jumping right into the lineup. It's just loads of different names, loads of different people. What's your make of what the defense did yesterday?
So I thought the defense, to their credit, or perhaps not credit, but after 4 brutal weeks, at least we didn't have to face the prospect with the 5th one. And before we kind of dive into specific players and specific positions, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up, and that's earlier this week, Ulbrich was asked about substitutions on the defensive line, because the Jets are doing them quite often. I think Quincy Williams, who's kind of should be the centrepiece of that, is only playing like 60% of snaps a week. I think it's 61 is his season average, which feels low. And Ulbrich was asked about this, and he said, well, it's because of our scheme. Like, as we've spoken about before on this podcast, their job is to get 3 yards upfield and get in the quarterback's face or get in the running back's face. They're playing at a high intensity, explosiveness. They're not sitting back and containing. They are strap it and go. So that is obviously, we're talking about 350-pound guys here. That is a lot of muscle to move up the field quickly, powerfully, explosively. So there is going to be a need for substitutions. And I was keeping an eye on this yesterday. And what the Jets seem to do, which is frankly bizarre, is they seem to do mass substitutions.
Yeah.
So it's not rotating through the line where you'd have Quincy Williams next to Rankins, but then you might take JFM off and bring Carl Phillips on. We're looking at a situation where the Jets are kind of fully rotating 4 in, 4 out. So you'll have your starting defensive line on there for portions, and then your backup defensive line on there for portions. And it just ends up giving the offense plays off almost in that offensive line, because when the starting front 4 were on yesterday, they caused some carnage and they were able to get up the field and get off it. And it didn't quite show up as much as we would have liked in the stat sheet in terms of sacks and QB hits.
I think that was because Tua was just he was
getting the ball out quickly.
Yeah,
wasn't
he was. He was doing a good job of getting
close.
the ball out. Yeah.
But what they were able to do is kind of get up the field. And the backup defensive line just weren't able to kind of create anything similar to that. So what I'd like to see moving forward is kind of rotate through your line. Keep two people on for a series while you have two backups in, and then kind of flip it for another couple of plays, just so you keep that pressure on and don't kind of give the offense these plays off. And it'll be interesting to see if Ulbrich gets asked about that this week, because I think that's a kind of very... The defense, I mean,
do you think that's because of like trying to keep things as simple as possible? Once again, it's like everything is catered towards kind of not limiting the mental errors.
Yeah, perhaps, but it's such a vanilla scheme for these front four guys that I wouldn't fully buy that, because it's not like different roles where you've got someone to set the edge, someone to contain, someone.
But the whole 12-man on the 12-man, you know, when you get caught off with substitutions, not knowing who's supposed to come on, like if it's line 1, line 2, then when one of them comes off, they all come off, and it kind of keeps it simple. So at no point does one person go, oh, I'm supposed to go off, and then they get caught when
perhaps. Other teams are able to execute it. I don't really buy that.
No, I don't think it's a good reason.
That wouldn't be able to do that.
No.
Defense as a whole was kind of okay. I mean, we were kind of helped by the fact that the Dolphins' offense is pretty horrific.
It's just Jalen Waddle, isn't it? Basically,
it's Mike Gesicki is
and Mike Gesicki and a sprinkle of and the Titans. Yeah, but
they don't really have a running game to speak of.
No,
don't really have options. I think they were kind of killed by numbers. I mean, some of the guys you're starting in the safety position in particular, you're talking about proper signed off the street, have a practice session with and get in. Like, these people are players who are on practice squads around the league, and we're suddenly thrusting them into starting roles, which is obviously going to be hard. I think Quincy Williams looked a massive step up from Jared Davis, which is
not great.
Slightly worrying in the sense that Jared Davis was our first free agency signing, and he has just been absolute dog water so far this season. So it was good to see Quincy Williams back in. Then he played. Whatever you can say about anyone, like Quincy Williams plays with an intensity, with a heart, with a fire. Kind of gets after it, and that's kind of what you want to see. But similarly to offense, in critical times, they managed to shoot themselves in the foot, did the defense. And I go back to two plays on third downs in the red zone, and the first one was just before the Dolphins' first touchdown, where the defensive line gets pressure on Tua kind of throws the underneath pass to his tight end, and two or three Jets, including CJ Mosley, overshoot.
Ashton Davis was first, and then missed it, and then
CJ Mosley kind of gets there, overshoots it, and suddenly they've got a first down, and you're first and goal from the 1 yard line with a couple more plays, and easy to concede that. And that's just simple mental errors where you've got to understand the situational football is so important. That's the position where
CJ
it's not about laying not about laying a big hit there. It's about kind of playing the situational football, wrapping your man up, stopping any forward progress, and getting him down. And then you're off the field, and it's only 3-0 as opposed to 7-0.
I will say one thing about that play, though. If you watch the replay, and I think it will come out when we see the All-22 and we see a bit better angles, but from the looks of it, it looks like Ashton Davis was shoved in the back by being, I think it was Albert Wilson, number 2. So that's why he kind of lost the angle a little bit. And then CJ, for me, the play was bad enough because CJ was the one who really caused the problem. Because, like I said, you can say that was happening, but CJ should have made it a non-factor, because he should have wrapped up the guy against the sideline, kept contained, and kept them from getting the first down. So you can see both sides of the angle, but I do. It was a frustrating angle. First, it was
the Jets don't get blocking the back calls this season, so
the Jets don't get any calls. But I think officiating when it's just been terrible across the board. You see so many games where you're like, that was a foul. Oh, hold on, that was a bit harsh. It's too much of it this year. It's a really poor year for officiating. But
speaking of it, the second play that I wanted to call out from red zone was the third down where John Franklin Myers commits the roughing the passer call, and I thought the call was fair enough. I thought that was the right call, but it's just, and Shaq Lawson also got in there too and kind of committed the same offence, and it's just so stupid, such poor understanding of the situation that you're in that situation. You just cannot make that mistake.
Hall made a great play on that.
Great play on the ball and stopped it. And then you're kind of talking about the difference between being 17-14 down and being 21-14 down. And it's a huge difference, especially when you're hamstrung by having Joe Flacco at quarterback. You need to kind of keep it as simple as possible. And it just goes back to that understanding. I think that one you can blame on like the players. You don't even need to get the coaches involved because you're being paid a lot of money. John Frank Lamar's got a big contract this year. He's meant to be one of the founding pieces, building blocks for this defensive line. And to give away that penalty in that position, in that situation, is just so stupid. Like on first down, fair enough, you can have a bit of extra juice. On third down, you're so close to getting off the field, you just need to kind of just play in your role, play in yourself. And I think it's so sloppy.
Yeah.
Other defensive positions, I think the Jets, which is slightly worrying that we're saying this about Brandon Eccles, but they missed him yesterday. Isaiah Dunn didn't really impress me too much. He kind of got caught out for the long touchdown. It was eyes got lazy, attracted down the field, and kind of missed the runner in behind, so he was missed. Jason Pinnock looked alright. There was one play where he got beat by Jalen Waddle outside, but it was only a perfectly placed ball that managed to get it in there. I thought he was okay.
It was a great catch as well. It was like
great catch.
Yeah.
So again, pieces, but it's just simple mistakes. And this defense, similar to what we said about the offense, kind of needs 6 or 7 new starters going into next season. You need both safeties. Kind of probably need to replace. You probably need to find another cornerback, another linebacker. You need to find an edge rusher.
I think it's going to get there. Like I said, we're going to throw a lot of assets in the off season. I think it's very clear that I think on the offense there's probably less work to do in terms of premium assets. There's a few there. There's a few for sure, but I think the defense definitely needs the spotlight this off season to really infuse that talent that needs to play in this system. And I see the trajectory could be there if Carl Lawson can get back as well, and if we get let's say Joyner comes back and we don't know what May is going to happen, but Joyner. If he comes back as well, I think there's a path to us getting back to putting together a decent defense for next year. But it's just riding out this year. I mean, Ashton Davis is the guy who's not a street free agent, a guy who's been here for a while, a guy who's pretty high draft pick himself. He's struggling. He was always athletically gifted. He's just very raw coming in, very raw, and he's just not ready for it. Which I don't think it's not. We're not saying anything that he can't be the player, but it's he's struggling right now, and I think I think this is good experience for him to kind of learn and maybe improve from in year 3 and 4. But right now he's struggling, and I mean simple things like you've got to, he's got the speed to do it, but he's just taking bad angles, and like he needs to basically push. Who's the guy on the long touchdown? I forgot his name. Who the long touchdown from Tua. Was it the tight end or was it a receiver or tight end?
Tight end. But I think what you're about to say is pretty harsh.
I don't know. I just feel like you've got to just make sure that you're getting him out bounds so that he's out. I mean, it may still be a touchdown, but I feel like we've seen in previous plays in this year where we've stopped people from getting the touchdown and we end up keeping them to field goals, and then that could be a difference. If you look at the end of the game, we're chasing the game with 10 points down. Then you're just one drive away from getting a touchdown rather than having to go for the field goal and the onside kick. I don't know. Maybe it's too harsh. Maybe if I go back and watch the film when the coach's film comes out and you see maybe I'm a bit too harsh. I just feel like once he was there, I felt he reached too early and made contact just a little bit too early where you could have got him out of bounds before, and you allowed him to kind of tiptoe down the sideline and stay in. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt at the time when I saw the angle, I felt that he could have taken a slightly better angle and maybe stayed on his, not lunged as early. He could have taken a few more steps to make sure he got a good lunge and got that power to get him out of bounds, even if it was at the 1 yard line. I don't know. Again, they may just drive it in, but you never know. Like we saw against was it the Titans? No, it was the Bengals, right? Where we stopped them on the 1 yard line and we did a goal line stand. So I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that again, as a potential. So that is what it is. But I think overall the defense was okay. I think the substitutions on the defensive line they need to figure out what they're doing. You gotta keep your better players on more often. Linebacking, Quincy, definitely a guy that I prefer to see out there because he'll make his mistakes, but at least he makes some really boom plays as well. That kind of can really kind of derail the offensive drive for the other team. So I think it's just not everything what you said is what it is. I think we just have to look for players in the off season, whether it be free agency or the draft, to really round out this defense and really infuse it with talent and speed, really.
Yeah, totally. I think on both sides of the ball, as I kind of said, to kind of keep building this process, keep building the squad. My kind of estimations after yesterday's game was you're probably looking at 4 or 5 starters on the offense and 6 or 7 on the defense, and a new kicker.
Yeah, the kicker.
So that's a big job for Joe Douglas, and so far he hasn't quite got it done in free agency. I think it'd be fair to say if you look at the signings this year, Carl Lawson, no impact on the season. Corey Davis is probably slipping down into where he was kind of anticipated to be, that kind of wide receiver 1. He's kind of becoming a more of a wide receiver 2 role, and kind of they're spreading the load around the wide receiver room quite a lot. So it's not looked too great. I mean, on the offensive line, you've got Greg Van Roten and Connor McGovern, who are pretty terrible players. I mean, Connor McGovern was pretty awful yesterday. Again, I'm so bored of reading about PFF grades for Connor McGovern because he looks unanimously awful, and he keeps getting plays blown up yesterday. So it's a big job. I mean, you've got to try and keep some faith in Joe Douglas based on how well the young draft class this year is doing. Hopefully Mekhi Becton comes back and we get to see a bit of him, but it's a big job to be done. And
at least he's doing some things right. I mean, look at those trades, right? I mean,
yeah, well,
Sam Darnold, Jamal Adams trades are just those trades. I mean, the Jamal Adams one's just looking unbelievable right now. Seahawks Twitter is in absolute flames right now with the fact that what they gave up for him, and the fact that they're looking at a top 10 pick, if not top 5 pick potentially, with their team struggling. And we've got it.
Their run gets a bit easier now. They've got a couple of. I think they've still got Texans and Lions to play.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, even if it's a top 12 pick, you're thinking that's a key pick for them to try and help rebuild. And the fact that they don't own it is a massive shot. But it's the worst case scenario, really, isn't it? Where you do that. I mean, it's what the Texans had with Miami, where the Texans were so poor. And yet Miami had their pick last year, and you're like, it's not
plenty
good
for us to break down in the off season at least.
Yeah, it just brings another exciting off season, which is what it is. But I think there's a lot of excitement still to come. We will be facing the Texans, flying down to Houston next Sunday for a game that if it's on the road, but it's one of the teams that they're coming off a very good win against the Titans. But I feel even then we can give them a good game. Hopefully Zach comes back. Hopefully we get some explosive plays, but also some controlled play, that is something he's learned on the sidelines. And hopefully Zach 2.0 comes back and we get that. That would be really fun. We'll be previewing the game later in the week. We'll be speaking with a Texans UK fan, which is a Turn Up for What podcast. And so, I'll be speaking with him, previewing the game. He's actually flying out to the game as well. So that's fun for him. I'm sure he circled the Jets as a potential win for it was like, if he's going to go to one game, the Jets home game is the one that he probably saw as a potential win. So it's probably right assessment, really. So we'll be on that one. Matt, is there anything you wanted to say to the listeners before we head off?
No, just enjoy your week. Have a good one. Cheers for listening.
Absolutely, yeah. So enjoy your week, and we move on to the next week, and hopefully some good news at the QB position health-wise, and we see Zach back in. So enjoy your week, and we'll catch you later in the week.